Broadcasting live from Youngville, North Carolina and Ontario, Canada, this is Got Mead Live, a weekly show where Vicky Rowe and AJ Aramutz bring you the mead news, meadery info, and mead-making discussions from all over, talking with mead makers, mead owners, industry mavens, and influencers. This is Got Mead Live, a weekly podcast about mead and the people who love it and where the mead world is going. And now here are your hosts, Got Mead owner Vicky Rowe and mead and wine maker AJ Aramutz.
There we go. Live from the den of the puppies of the apocalypse and the bunny pen in Ottawa, Canada, it's Got Mead Live. Welcome to the show. AJ and I do this because, well, we're a little crazy and because we love mead and all of that. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who tune in to listen to us either when we're operating, when we're on the air, or when we're... Yeah, you got to not look at the feed when other people are typing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, those of you that tune in to listen to us when we're on the air or take us with you, to make mead, to go to work, whatever it is, that's really appreciated. We had something like over 700 downloads last week. That was pretty damn cool. So thank you. That was really awesome. I get this weekly report. It's like, yeah. So
that's really awesome.
It is really awesome. So we appreciate it. It keeps us motivated to keep doing this, even on weeks when AJ's got to work right after the show's over, and
I don't tonight. Yay!
Yeah, which he doesn't. Thank God. But the problem with this stuff is that all these people that we use to broadcast this stuff, they want money. It kind of sucks, but there you go. So I wanted to give a big shout out to the people that signed up to become Got Mead patrons this week, who have renewed and who have been with me and Got Mead forever. AJ, for instance, has been a Got Mead patron for, Jesus, a long time.
Not as long as I've been around on the forum, but
yeah,
a
right.
while.
But it's like years,
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, because you're the reason that we can afford to do this. All this stuff costs money. So whenever somebody signs up for a patron, that money goes right into the pay for Got Mead's stuff that needs to be paid for fund.
So that Vicky's husband doesn't kill her.
So my husband doesn't kill me if I take it out of the budget, which has happened on more times than I care to think about. So anyway, thank you. And for those of you who are wondering what the hell is a patron, patron membership is $30 a year. It gets you access to the patron Got Mead Facebook group. It gets you access to the patron group on our forum, which also has award-winning recipes in it that you can use. And so 50 cents a week. Basically, we're going to give you a little bit of jump up. We're going to give you some special things. But mainly we're going to say thank you, because that $30 a year combined with the $30 a year from all the other people, and there's only a couple hundred of you that do that, help me to pay off the monthly debt that Got Mead tends to incur. So thank you very much. It's very welcomed. Those of you that are maybe new, you can catch us live on the Got Mead website. If you're listening, you already know this. Gotmead.com. If you want to listen to us later, we are also syndicated on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, and Google Play. Just search Got Mead Live. I was going to say Google Live. That would be kind of scary, actually. You can find us online at, of course, Gotmead.com. On Facebook, we are Facebook.com/Gotmead for the page, and Facebook.com/groups/Gotmead for our main group. Twitter is @GotMeadNow. Feel free to tweet us. I'm usually watching the feed during the show. If you want to send us questions, suggestions, or ideas for the show or for the site, if you want to write an article, whatever you might want to send us, you can just put your mouse over Got Mead Live at Gotmead.com. There'll be a drop down. Click that drop down menu item. That'll take you to a form where you can send us an email, and we will get that in our email. And of course, if you'd like to call in sometime during the show, you can call us at 803-443-MEAD. That's 803-443-6323. Whew. So, what are we drinking?
I've got that bottle of Western Reserve Meadery's Buckwheat Cherry Mead. This is the second time I've brought it on the show, and I think I'm finally starting to detect the cherry now that it's had a chance to breathe.
Okay.
It's an absolutely gorgeous color. But, I know myself, sometimes cherry just doesn't show up to the party no matter how much you put in. But I
Yeah.
think I'm finally starting to notice it a little bit here now in this one. And, I think I am a bit of a sucker for buckwheat honey. And since I don't have to work tonight, I went into the 16.5% stuff. So it's going to be a fun night.
So if AJ gets really happy, you'll know why.
If Vicky mutes me, you'll know why.
I am rocking some Frolicking Fig mead from Good Road Cider Works, and they also do mead. And my friend Allie and her husband Neil, who came up to visit me on Saturday, came up and brought this to me because they stopped in Charlotte on the way up. So I chatted up Kevin at Good Roads and told him what I wanted, and he took care of my friends, and they tasted many yummy things, and then they brought me mead. So it's cool. So this is called Frolicking Fig. It's a 12.8% semi-sweet mead. The aroma is actually fairly light. I expected kind of a more in-my-face aroma because figs, but it's actually quite delicate, and it's definitely figs, and there's sort of a caramel and brown sugar, very dark note. This is using a dark honey and some spices. So it's got this sort of tangy flavor to it. You get the spice and the figs, the dark honey, there's caramel, dark, like a dark almost Bochet kind of flavor to it, and there's some chocolate notes. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I can sort of see fig giving a kind of a Bochet thing.
Yeah, well, and they're using a dark honey too, so yeah. But yeah, I like it. It's a real pretty color too. It's like a kind of a dark reddish brown. If it was any other thing, I'd say it was oxidized, but it's not. So because it kind of has that color to it. It's got a sherry-like color. But anyway, if you guys want to check them out, they're at goodroadsciderworks.com. Unfortunately, this is growler only, so you have to actually go to Charlotte to get it. But it's pretty good, and if you're in the vicinity of Charlotte, I recommend you go check them out.
Cool.
Yeah. Now, those of you that may not have been paying attention, we're having Lance Shaner, who is co-owner of Omega Yeast, on tonight. And with him, we're going to have Carvin Wilson, because Omega Yeast is, I think, the only place in the state, or the only place that is bringing to the States a Norwegian Queek mead yeast that ferments at like 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So, which is just ridiculous. I can't believe it. Really, it throws like really clean, lots of tropical notes and like a really clean ferment. It's crazy. But since Carvin is, well, because he's Carvin, and because he's been playing with high temp ferments, I figured we could have a lot more interesting conversation if the two of them were on. In fact, we may just sit and listen to them talk. I don't know. We'll find out. I got a quick PSA for Omega Yeast. Omega Yeast produces fresh, high-quality, and pitch-ready liquid yeast for pro brewers and home brewers. We're a dedicated crew located in Chicago and St. Louis, a handful of microbiologists, home brewers, professional brew staff, and craft beer fans who have made it our express purpose to make brewing easier and better for everyone. Check them out at omegayeast.com. Alrighty then, I think we shall get crazy and bring our guests in here.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Let's see.
Oh, they say get crazy, easier done than said.
Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I got the right number in here for Carvin. Well, I have two numbers for him, and he's at his cottage tonight. So.
Well, I guess if you get the answering machine, you try the other one, right?
Yeah. All right, let's see if this is gonna work. And yeah, it's funny how you can't hear it ringing. Okay, so I got the wrong one for Carvin. Hi, Lance. Welcome to Got Mead Live. This is Vicky.
Hi, thanks. Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Glad to have you on the show. Got AJ with me. She's my partner. I'm sorry I sound a little stilted. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time and get Carvin in here too.
No problem.
Hi there.
Hi.
So there was a lot of excitement going on when I posted this afternoon about having you guys on the show. So a lot of people don't yet know who Omega is. So I would
Yeah.
love for you to kind of tell us a little bit of this story. I read a fab article about you guys on 750, was it 750? Yeah, 750.
Yeah.
That was a
hmm
really good article, and I linked it on my show post. But tell folks who you guys are and how you got into this thing.
Sure. So the company's been around now for a little over 6 years. Um, I started home brewing when I was in college, which is now about 20 years ago that I started home brewing, and was actually a member of the homebrew club they have there at the University of Illinois, called Buzz. And it's actually a university sanctioned homebrew club.
Okay.
So I got to learn how to brew there around some really fantastic brewers, people who I think are still even in the club today. Just kind of opened my eyes to the beer you could make at home. I just it was an eye-opening experience, and started my affair with beer. And then so I ended up, while I was in college, switched my major to microbiology. So started to get comfortable with microbes, and then stuck with that in graduate school. Moved to Houston, Texas, and got a PhD in microbiology, actually studying yeast. So the same organism, but more in a basic science context. So not beer related, but I did get to grow my yeast in lab for my own at home beer making hobby. So that was nice. Um, but along the way, I ended up getting a little disenchanted, I guess, with the idea of being in academics. So I kind of took a right turn and went to law school. Um, yeah, which
Jeez.
seems unrelated, but is more related, I think, than it sounds on the surface. So my whole intent of going to law school was to.
Hello, this is Carvin.
Hey,
Uh,
you made it, Carvin. Sorry, Lance. Welcome to Got Me
oh, no,
Live
no
again,
problem.
Carvin. We got Lance on with us. He was just giving us the story.
Awesome. Welcome, Lance.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi. Yeah. So I was just. Oh yeah.
Law
So
school.
Law
law
school. You were in
school,
law school.
and yes, trying to forget those days.
Yeah, well, you know.
uh, so the idea was I was going to be a patent attorney. So to be a patent attorney, you have to have both the legal degree and a technical degree, because you're essentially acting as the go-between from the inventor to the patent office. So you have to be able to translate an inventor's invention into legal language. So it's a training in both sides. Um, so I did that. I ended up working for Marshall Gerstein and Boren in Chicago, right out of law school, and did that for 4 years. At which point I had a very fateful conversation with one of my colleagues at the firm, Andy Smith, who was in the midst of starting 1090 Brewing in the Chicago area. And we were just chatting about yeast and where he was going to be getting it and how much it cost to ship it from the Pacific Northwest and all this. I'm like, wow, this could be an opportunity here. So it was literally that conversation that sparked the idea of starting a yeast lab in Chicago. And
Huh.
so literally went home that evening and started planning it.
Cool.
Um, and then I had a conversation with another one of my colleagues at the firm, Mark Schwartz, who ended up being my business partner. Was just kind of tossing around the idea with him and talking numbers about it. And then he came to my office a few days later and asked if I wanted a business partner. And agreed on the spot, and we are off to the races. And I mean, had a place leased and kind of built out the basics within like 4 months after the initial conception, and then just slowly built up business in Chicago, just supplying brewers locally, and then branched out from there to shipping across the country, and now even and lots of countries around the world.
Cool.
And here we are.
That is really cool. When I was reading the 750 article, they obviously talked to you guys for a while. Um, there was something in there about you guys got contacted by German lady from a small brewery.
Oh, Lithuanian.
Lithuanian, sorry,
Oh
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really
No,
cool. I want everybody to hear this story. This is really great.
yeah. So it was actually the Lithuanian consulate in Pennsylvania that reached out initially. And yeah, I mean, it was, you don't get into this business expecting to hear from the Lithuanian consulate.
Not really.
But yeah, she was contacting us on behalf of a brewer in rural Lithuania named Aldona Udrian of the Jovaru brewery, like a family brewery that's been around since the mid 19th century. And I think she'd been told over the years that the beer she's making is kind of unique, and she attributed that profile to the yeast. And brewers thought that she should make her yeast available to other brewers. So the consulate was reaching out to us on her behalf to see if we were interested in growing the yeast and providing it to people. So we went back and forth for ended up being like a year or two that we kind of be on our radar for a while and then off the radar, and finally we just kind of got a deal hacked out to provide her strain, and she gets a percentage of the sales. And we can use her name on the strain, so we call it the Jovaru Lithuanian Farmhouse ale strain after her brewery. But yeah, it was unusual, I guess, to say the least, to get contacted by the Lithuanian consulate. But it ended up Mark, my business partner, ended up getting to go downtown to the Chicago consulate and sit there in a business suit and eat tree cake with the consul general in Chicago. So it was quite an experience.
Yeah, not the sort of thing that happens to just anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. So you guys have come up over what, 5 years? Did you say?
6
Six
now.
years now? Yeah,
Yeah.
from and you're just taking the world by storm. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy ride. I mean, we've doubled our output every year of our existence.
Wow.
Up around 30 employees now. It's been growing pretty fast.
That is pretty
Wow.
cool. Lance, I'm gonna you haven't met Carvin yet, so I'm going to introduce you. Uh, Carvin Wilson is relatively new to the mead scene in terms of years, but is like an old fogey in terms of experience. He he came in and started making mead and winning awards, and he loves to experiment and digs really deep. This is what happens when you have programmer brain.
Hmm.
On the things that he's interested in. And this year at the 2019 American Mead Makers Association Mead Conference, the MeadCon in Colorado, Carvin spoke on high temperature fermentation. He's been studying that, and pretty much the entire mead world is going, "Oh, pshaw, nobody could do that." and,
Hmm.
and he basically brought in all the evidence and the meads that he had made using these techniques and yeasts to prove that it could indeed happen. So he's changing our world, and he's a good guy, and he's just been really generous to everybody in the mead community, and he's just a great guy. Sorry, Carvin, I'm gushing on you. So Carvin, Lance Carvin.
Hi.
Well, thanks for the intro. And Lance, it's a pleasure meeting you. And been using some of your products for a while. A couple corrections on just a couple of minor additions on from what Vicky said. I've actually been making wine for a very long time. So wine is kind of, well, let me change that. Country wine. So that's kind of my background, is in making country wine. So I've been in and out of mead and wine for probably about 15 years. So I've been around for
You've just been
a
quiet
pretty
about
long
it.
time. I'm just quiet about it.
At least you were,
So,
anyway.
Pardon
wasn't.
my ignorance, but what differentiates country wine from wine?
Well, folks down in Louisiana, we have our own special way of making wine. So so to get the ABV up, there's a lot of sugar there's a lot of sugar added. And when you're making cabs and pinots and merlots and things that I make too as well, you don't really add a lot of sugar to them. So we call those wines down south, we call them country wines.
Gotcha.
Whereas here up north, country wines are anything that doesn't involve grapes, or involves grapes and anything that is plus anything that isn't grapes.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it was defined.
Well, you do live in Canada, and Canada is a strange ass place.
This is true. I won't argue with that.
Yeah.
It's hard to grow grapes in some places.
Yeah, we're all over, Lance. Carvin's in Arizona, AJ's in Ontario, and I'm in North Carolina. So.
Oh wow, yeah.
So Lance, I have been using some of your products. I've used your Voss. I've used your Hornindale. I've actually used the Lithuanian farmhouse here recently to make a mead, and I've used the Hothead. I've actually used a lot of your products, but I really love your the Voss and the Hornindale at high temps. And when I say high temps, my last Voss mead I fermented right around 82. Well, it ranged from 82 to 88, and that mead was just very, very clean. The mead that I served at the American Meat Makers Meat Con, that was made with Voss, and that was fermented in the high 80s using some honey from my own hive and some passion fruit puree, and that mead was very well received, very clean, and very tropical. It's a beautiful yeast, and it can really open up mead making to people who, a lot of folks don't have the capability of fermenting, in the 60s or even the 70s per se. So, exploring yeast like that and exploring other wine yeast that people can use at high temperatures really opens up mead making to a lot of new mead makers.
Yeah, and my limited experience with mead, when I first started brewing, I had made some, and what I remember about the process was that whatever I made ended up needing, lots of time to mellow.
You probably had a lot of rocket fuel going on there, a lot of
exactly.
a lot of fusel alcohol.
Right, and that's what seems to be kind of unique about these Norwegian Kvike is that they just don't seem to make these compounds, so they don't require that aging to mellow.
Yeah. Well, you're not stressing these yeasts out. They're really embracing the heat, so they can really handle those high temperatures really well. And the fermentations are very clean. Now, keep in mind that I am feeding these yeasts too as well. So a typical fermentation for myself with these is, and I've done them with starters and without starters, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I would say for the most part, I'll make like a 10-20 starter with honey and water. Put the yeast in there, and I'll use, and most meat people are going to be familiar with this. I like to use a high YAN protocol for the Voss and the Hornindale yeast, and I mostly pitch a lot of the nutrients up front, and because, man, that yeast can just churn through like a 1060 or 1070 meat pretty quickly. I do tend to keep the ABV, low, right around 8 to 10%, but I've never had a problem with those meats finishing in 7 days, sometimes less.
Yeah, and that sounds consistent with what I've heard from other. Unfortunately, in-house, we just have not. That's an avenue we have not explored yet, like meads and ciders and whatnot. We really should, but Ryan Richardson at the Mead House had shared some results with me recently. Said they've been playing with these yeasts for about a year now, and he's even pushing them up to 100 degrees and still getting good results and really fast fermentations. The nutrient issue is something that I'd definitely like to hear all your opinions on. I think it's kind of just something you do as a matter of course in mead, but what we've seen in malt wort is lower gravities. Some of these Norwegian strains actually struggle compared to the higher gravities, and the the best theory we have so far is that there's just a nutrient deficiency that is overcome when you've got high gravity, more malt. There's just more of all the nutrients there, contributed by the malt. But at lower so we've always recommended at lower gravity to be judicious, not judicious, add plenty of nutrients for the low gravity worts. And obviously on the mead side, you just have to be doing that as a matter of course, just given that mead would not have much in the way of nutrients. I don't know if you have any anecdotes about different nutrient levels or any particular nutrients that you think are helping.
Ironically, I do, because I measure my nutrients, so I know just how much yan is in my wort because I take samples of it. So I'm between 250 parts per million to 300 parts per million for my yan with most of my mead. So, and I try to stay in that window because I don't like to go too much, but man, I find that for those particular yeast that seems to be the sweet spot, and that works well for me. And like you said, beer wort, there's a lot of nitrogen already in there, but we all know that honey lacks a lot of that nitrogen content. And if you put fruit in there, depending on the fruit, depending on the time of the year, depending on the terroir, there's some nitrogen levels in fruit, but that varies too as well. So I always measure, and I'll adjust for a high yan level. My goal is always 300 parts per million.
Is that in particular for these yeasts? I mean, is that a higher level than you'd use with other yeasts, or is that pretty typical?
For these yeasts, that's pretty high. It's actually going to vary for me by yeast. I just find that these yeasts ferment cleaner at that nitrogen level for me, based upon my research. But depending on a yeast, like a yeast like DV10 or D21, I'm probably right around 125 parts per million. So it really depends on the yeast.
Yeah. What about other nutrients, vitamins and?
So a typical protocol for me would be is I'm adding Go Firm to my starter. So that's a rehydration nutrient that you can get from Scott's Lab, and I've done it both with Fermate-O, which is another Scott's Lab product, and I've done it with Fermate-K and DAP2 as well. So and combinations of Fermate-O, Fermate-K, and DAP2 as well. So I've gone the spectrum, but I still try to stay in that sweet spot of 300 parts per million.
Good info. So
I don't know what you quantify as high ABV in the beer world, but I know that I've taken the Voss up to 16%, and no off flavors, just clean as it was.
Yeah, we've done a couple 16% ABV beers with Hornindal. We did a Imperial Stout and a barley wine. Same thing. I mean, the barley wine we had, it was essentially terminal in 48 hours. I mean, it took 48 hours to get to 16% alcohol. And then
you know what?
Gave it
at one point in my life, I would have said that was just batshit crazy. But having used these yeasts, I know that is possible.
Yeah, and that's what we hit. We inoculated, I think, at 90, and just let it rip, and it was done. And that's kind of what I mean by the high. It does better. That's no addition of any nutrients. That's just we just let it rip, and it was done in 48 hours. And we've had a 1040 gravity wort take 3 or 4 days to ferment. I mean, it's just
crazy.
Weird.
It's a remarkable yeast. So at the MeadCon, Mary Izette, she was our wonderful guest speaker there, And, she came to my presentation, and I was told her, I was messing around with the yeast in the 80s, and she's like, let it rip. She's like, let it go above 90. And I had a couple other people tell me that too as well. So, when I got back home, I did some Voss trials and some Horndahl trials at 90, and wow, just that 5-7 degree move in temp produce such different aromatics and esters from the yeast, all clean, all desirable, but it's like, wow. And it did decrease the fermentation time too as well. So yeah. There's some remarkable yeast that can really, really play well with a lot of great mead recipes. The Voss throws crazy tropical notes. I really, really love the flavor profile of that. And Horndahl, it throws a lot of green pepper notes at high temperatures and straight wildflower honey. But very desirable. Really like them.
Good.
That is really cool. I mean, I'm so used to having to, wrap wet towels around it, because I've been too lazy to convert my chest freezer to a temperature control system. But yeah, what's really been fun to watch though is as your yeasts, Lance, and what Carvin's been doing, because he's like there's not that many people that are playing with high temps right now, and Carvin's been out there talking about it. And it's just been interesting watching the online community of mead people just kind of collectively go, oh, pshaw, and then they all go, what? Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Well, you're missing out. There's a lot of flavors up there. I try to tell people, and Lance, you got a great product. I'm not sitting here blowing stuff your way. I tested this for a while before I did my presentation for MeadCon, and I tried to break that yeast as much as possible. Even when I went down to low yan, it didn't throw any off flavors. It just fermented better. And when I say better, the fermentation was more consistent. And by consistent, I mean, the bricks drop per day was more in line. So when I fed it low yan, it just started off slow. And it finished fast, but when you feed it high yan, it just starts out of the gate fast and it finishes fast. So it really it's really what you want to achieve, I guess, per se. And keep in mind my batches are, when I was doing a lot of this, a lot of the batches were 1 gallon to 5 gallons. So, doing the low yan route might appeal to some commercial mead makers because you might not want some of that thermal mass that is being created by fermentation to heat that fermentation vessel up as quick. If you feed it high yan, you better buckle your seatbelt and be ready for that thing to just take off and just go. But there were no off flavors. No matter where I fed it, high, medium, or low, it did its job. It's just that it was more consistent when I gave it high yan.
Yeah, I mean, and in the brewing world, I mean, what we've been kind of telling people, if your bottleneck is your equipment, and as far as getting beer out the door, like you can literally get more beer out the door with the same equipment using these yeasts, and you're not sacrificing quality. It's what they do, and so yeah. But I mean, if you're not in a hurry, you can obviously make other changes, but you treat them right, let them ferment hot, and you can get a great product really, really quickly and get more out of your equipment. Definitely what we're seeing in the beer world.
I can definitely see it. I've seen it from my perspective and from doing my test in the mead world too as well. It's a beautiful yeast, and it's contrary to what a lot of mead makers want to believe, that we've all been told ferment low, but mead is situational. And on top of that, if you tell me to do something one way, I'm going to find a way to do it another way, because I don't like following rules to begin with. So
Yeah.
and this yeast is a rule breaker. You just got to embrace the heat with a lot of these yeasts. And even some of your ill strains now. With your ill strains, you got to follow some of the traditional logic and keep the fermentation temperature low. But I've won a few medals with your Irish ill strain and your British ill strain, and those strains ferment really, really well. They make really good mead. I haven't found one yet that I've used from Omega that I haven't really enjoyed using, and there's definitely a few that I would recommend.
Good.
Carvin,
it's good to hear.
Have you played with the, is it Kvik, Lance? Is that right?
Kite,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my Norwegian is terrible, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. So basically we were talking about those, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just refer to it as the Voss and a Harnendal. But yeah, I've used those. I've used Hothead. I've used, I've used so many. I actually tried to get your mailing address, Lance, prior to the call, so I can get you some of these meads over, so you can taste some of the finished products. So maybe we can touch base after this. But yeah, I've actually used a lot of your yeast to make mead, and contrary to popular belief, and Billy Betts will tell you this, and he chimes in all the time, there's a lot of flavors in ale yeast. There's a lot of flavor in liquid yeast. You can't rule it out. Wine. Yes, we all know that wine yeast makes good mead. That's been proven time and time again. But don't limit yourself. The Omegas of the world make really good yeast, and some of these strains are, you just have to go out there on a limb and try them.
Yeah, it's good that people are, because we haven't been. It's not an avenue we've explored like we should, but
we can hook you up.
We definitely will.
I was going
to say, if you guys want to.
Yeah,
if you guys want to send us stuff, that's fine.
Yeah, I had to say it's my fault that you didn't get stuff from Carvin ahead of time, because I dropped the ball. I was supposed to connect you two, and I got sidetracked and didn't do it, so that's my fault. But we'll definitely get you connected with him, and with the greater mead community too, so that you can start talking to folks, because there's a lot of interest out there for what you guys have to offer, and I love watching people go, "You mean I can ferment at 90 degrees?" It's pretty fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know there's a couple commercial guys who hit me up after MeadCon, and I know there's a few commercial batches going now, but there were, what I did was nothing new. All I did was shed light to it. The wine industry has been fermenting at higher temps for a long time. That's how I even got the idea for the presentation, was a trip to Napa Valley with my wife, and we were at Joseph Phelps, and I had this private tour with one of my clients, and we got to talk to the winemaker, and I'm like drilling this guy and on wine and yeast, and he's like, "You must be a winemaker." And I was like, "Yeah, something like that." I was like, I just like fermentation, and we just started talking about yeast and blending, and he's like, "Well, we average 84 Fahrenheit for our fermentations here," and I'm like, "Really?" I was like, "Tell me more." So we just start talking, and he's like, "It's all about making the yeast happy and in proper yeast selection." And he's like, "I'm not going to tell you the yeast that we use, but the yeast that we use, it can handle the heat." And he's like, "A lot of people don't understand the flavors that are up there," and just like with the Omega and the Norwegian and the Lithuanian strains, there's a lot of flavors up there. It's when you're competing at a comp, you can only make so many variations of a blackcurrant mead that tastes just like every damn other blackcurrant mead on the planet. It's like, it's nice to give the judges. It's nice to give the judges a little blackcurrant with a little tropical passion fruit or something like that comes from the yeast, and those yeast at high temperatures the Omegas and some of the other ones that we talked about during the presentation, they can really, really give you a lot of flavors. One of my favorite meats right now, and I'll send you a bottle of this one, Lance. It's a black currant meat that I made that I use all 3 of the Norwegian strains on, and then I blended them back together.
That's interesting.
So just don't even limit yourself to one yeast.
Yeah.
Blending is your friend.
Manny will be happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Manny's one of our sometime guest hosts. He's been busy with work, but he lives in Miami, and his favorite question is, do you blend your yeast? So we can tell him that Carvin said yes. Yes, he does.
Well, you know what? A lot of people won't admit it, and and I'll be the first to admit it. If you've judged the meat for me in a competition, I can guarantee you that I blended it. Very rarely will I ever submit a meat to a competition that I did not blend. If I can get it with 2 or 3 meats to give the judges what they want, I'm going to do that. It's not what I like. It's what the judges are going to like. And the judges in the Sugar Belt, which is the Midwest, and the judges on the California coast, you got to have the blending under your belt if you want to do well, and that works well with the Omega Yeast too as well. Is because they each bring something neat to the party, and when you start to blend those yeasts, you come up with something that's very unique and very beautiful.
Well, now I'm thinking I need to take some of that pink peppercorn that I got from Bee Folks and do 3 batches, one with each strain, and blend them back and see what I get.
Yeah. So I want to hear more about Lance's story, though. So enough about.
Go, Lance.
And
don't be afraid to ask questions too. About because we're connecting you.
I have a question for Lance. Lance, how do you come up with new strains? Of course, you probably got an awesome yeast bank. So, what is Omega doing to get the next Voss, the next call from the Lithuanian consulate to come up with the next awesome strain? How do you go about the process?
So we and if you're not already reading Lars' blog, that's how we discovered the Norwegian strain. So Lars Garshall, an actual Norwegian, was on his blog was documenting how he was examining the farmhouse brewing culture in Norway, and so we were just reading about these yeasts, and that's what he was talking about. They were doing, they're inoculating at 90, 95, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it sounded ridiculous because it goes against everything we had been taught as far as good clean fermentation. So we made it our mission to get a hold of some of these strains. So we reached out to him and asked if he could send some, and he sent them along. And the first thing we did was a split batch fermentation. So 70 degrees, 85 degrees, and 90 degrees. And so the same wort split 3 ways and fermented out and tasted them. And I mean, aside from real minor differences in the ester profile, with Hothead was the first one we got. We couldn't tell the difference. We weren't getting headaches from the one that we fermented in the 90s, and I was like, wow, these are the real deal. So we, as soon as we could, got that released. So so that's one way, is just kind of paying attention to what's going on out there, reading blogs and all that sort of stuff. And if it wasn't, I tell this to everybody, if it wasn't for Lars, we wouldn't know about these things. He single-handedly brought these to the attention of the world. They were literally farmhouse strains that had been maintained, not farmhouses in like a production brewery making farmhouse beers, like literally a farmhouse. And all these different farms in Norway kind of had their own strains that they'd, passed around over the years. And there's this culture of brewing on farmhouses just for themselves and for neighbors and whatnot that is very unique in the world, and it ended up yielding these very unique strains. So So yeah, that's one way, is just kind of paying attention to what's going on out there. And then making these things available, I think then puts you on the radar of other people, like the Lithuanian consulate. Like, oh, they're doing unique things with yeast. These would be good people to reach out to. Which is, I assume, how we ended up getting that call. So I guess that sort of thing is going to beget more of it, as if other people come across something that they think would be interesting. Another avenue we've taken is creating hybrids. So in a typical fermentation setting, yeast are just reproducing asexually. They just bud off little copies of themselves. But you, under the right conditions and with certain strains, you can coax them to undergo a sexual cycle. So you could get two different yeasts combining themselves and combining their genetic material into a brand new strain that's got genetics from both parents, just like we are the products of the genetics of both of our parents. So we're using those techniques to create new strains. So we have two of those that we've actually released. One which we call Saisonstein's Monster. It's a hybrid of two different Saison strains. The French Saison strain that's both commonly used in brewing. So French Saison and then the DuPont Saison. The idea behind doing that was that the DuPont strain in the beer world is kind of finicky. It makes a really nice beer. Like DuPont's one of the best beers in the world. But it'll just stall out like part way through fermentation and then just take forever to finish out. So the hope when we started that project was that by combining it with the French Saison strain, which maybe isn't as interesting from a flavor sense, but is much more reliable, we could get a strain that had the fermentation kinetics of the French and the flavor profile of the DuPont. So we created a big pool of hybrids from those and just brewed with them until we found one that we liked, one that had the traits we were looking for as far as fermentation kinetics and flavor profile. So I think there's just an endless number of things we could do out there like that, as far as combining traits from different strains to yield new flavor profiles, new fermentation kinetics. I think possibilities are endless.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Any new high temperature strains on the horizon? That's the thing. There are tons of these Kvike strains out there. We have another one in the collection that. We're, I guess, a little judicious about putting them out there because we want them to be unique. We don't want to put out another one just for the sake of putting out another one. So I think it's a matter of finding another strain that maybe has, more a unique flavor profile that goes beyond the three we've got. So we're not just putting out another one for putting out another one. It's got to be something special. So, we continue to look into it, but there's nothing imminent at the moment. Awesome.
From what I was when I was reading the 750 article, it looked like there was a lot of really neat stuff that you guys were up to. But one thing that kind of caught my attention was at the beginning they were talking about you got into this in college. You got into yeast in college.
Mm-hmm.
So were you homebrewing and then you discovered college had yeast, or college had yeast and you thought I could homebrew that?
What was I think it was first. I was 20, I think, when I started homebrewing, and I think the idea at that point was, hey, I can't buy beer.
I can make it in my
21.
dorm room. Yeah,
exactly.
I think a lot of us did
I
that.
can make it. Yeah, you can buy all the ingredients and make it yourself. So that was kind of the initial thought. And the funny thing is, it's ridiculous looking back on it, but I remember doing things like, this beer is taking way too long to ferment. Let's put it in a warm tub, and when you're doing the dry yeast that comes on the top of a can of malt extract, that does not make for a good beer. But the funny thing is, like, you could literally do that with these Norwegian strains and make a good beer. So at the time that was ridiculous, but now if we applied that same technique, it would actually be fine. But so that, yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of the idea when we got started, and then discovered the homebrew club at the university, and that's when I learned, that you could make ridiculously good beer at home. And of course, the best brewers in the club were doing all grain brewing, so it, very quickly, multiplied the equipment that I needed to make that sort of beer. But started doing that and just started to learn how to handle yeast then. But really, the microbiology I was doing in undergraduate was more, bacterial based, so I didn't have much experience with yeast other than using it for brewing. It was graduate school where I got a lot of hands-on experience with yeast and learning to genetically manipulate it. And that was actually even almost accidental. So when I went to Texas, I was going to, your first year of graduate school, you do a rotation through different labs in the department you're in order to kind of find the lab that you have a good fit in to do your whole, PhD thesis. So the first lab I was going to do a rotation through was studying anthrax, because I thought anthrax was pretty cool. But like 3 other graduate students from my same class were wanting to rotate through that lab, and I'm like, I don't want to go to the same lab everybody else is going to. So I ended up joining or doing my first rotation in Kevin Morano's lab, and he was using yeast to study heat shock response. And so I'm like, well, I use yeast when I brew, so it'd be kind of cool to just kind of learn more about it, and ended up loving it. I mean, it was a really good fit to the lab. I liked working with yeast in a research manner. I mean, they are really easy to genetically manipulate. You can, answer a lot of questions relevant to human health by studying yeast. So just, I fell in love with working with it right away, and then ended up joining that lab. So it's just funny how things ended up, working out that way. I think the idea of doing that rotation was just because I, liked beer and liked yeast, and ended up joining and getting a lot of experience with it that paid off in the long run.
Okay, too bad you couldn't like use a beer for part of your master's thesis,
Yeah, well, I did. I made plenty of beer and served it to the folks on the board, so it helped.
Oh, that's pretty funny. I can just say, you don't need to do the last 50 pages. It's thick enough to give me another one of
Yeah.
those. Oh wait, no, it's a PhD that the thicker it is, the better chance you have, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of politics,
Yeah.
and publications, and it's a good time. I mean, so much of it depends on the particular project you get. As far as like, some projects are just harder than others, and it's harder to yield work out of it. But I got little, I don't know. I like to think I was a little bit lucky in the project I ended up getting that yielded a lot of publications. So it was a relatively painless 5 years.
Beer probably didn't hurt any, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, what made you guys, take on the big boys? I mean, you were up against, Y Yeast and White Labs and some of these big monstrous yeast companies that have great yeast, Lalaman stuff like that. So, well, they're more wine, but yeah, and decide to just say, alrighty, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, it was. I mean, a lot of things, I guess. Just the growth of the industry at the time that I mean, I'd have to look back on where we were, number of breweries nationwide at the time, but I think it was somewhere around 2,500 when we launched, and there's now like 7,500. and so there were enough in Chicago that our idea was that we could get off the ground by just supplying locally. Like there was, if we could get into some of these breweries and start providing yeast to them, that would that there's literally enough locally to just service them and get off the ground and get our techniques down and all that, and then just kind of see where it went from there. And that's what ended up working out. For the first 9 months, I think we literally just drove yeast to our local customers, and we didn't ship it anywhere. About 9 months in that we did our first shipment. And the other thing we do a little different, I think, that differentiates us from some of the big guys, is that we do everything on the pro side custom. So when somebody orders a pitch, we start growing it then and send it out a week later as fresh as humanly possible. Whereas the big guys will make very large batches that depending on the popularity of the strain, might end up sitting in a cooler for 2 months before the brewer receives it, and then they have like lagging fermentations and all this stuff. So brewers get much better consistency from us because they're getting something fresh every time, and I think that's helped our grow. The word of mouth is what's gotten us to grow, because people have good experiences with us because we're making everything fresh, custom for them.
So Lance, do you have any meaderies or cideries that you know of on a commercial level that are using your yeast?
I'd have to go. We definitely have customers. Unfortunately, I should have researched this before I got on this call, but when the new customer forms come in, I definitely feel like I've noticed more of them, over the last several months. So we definitely have meaderies that are using us. I wouldn't say they're not, they're not the highest volume orderers or most frequent orderers, but I think people are more starting to just dabble in that sort of thing. It's not anything we've ever marketed ourselves for. Haven't gone out and talked at any sort of conference about it or anything, not doing our own research on it. It's something we probably should do, but we have customers in our customer base that are commercial meaderies, but I've not made it out to them myself to sample the wares.
How does research look for Omega when you're trying to do a new strain? That sounds like you put together a lot of batches, and there's a lot of drinking going on.
Yeah. We do have a
what a hard job.
We have a right. Yeah, we have a 1-barrel pilot system, and what we'll typically do is do 20 to 30 gallons of wort, and we'll split it into 5-gallon fermenters and pitch different yeast in each one, or same yeast, different temperatures. There's always an experimental goal when we're using our pilot system, and we probably brew weekly that way. And we've got more than 20 people that work in the Chicago production facility, so we've got, and everybody likes to drink beer, so we've got plenty of willing subjects. And fantastic brewers. A lot of our staff came from breweries, so they're better brewers than I ever was. So it's we can be confident that the wort production is good, and then we get to play with these different yeasts and different variables, and we do blind tastings, and take notes on all these things. So we do it. We do it all scientific like when we sample all these. So that part's definitely fun.
So when you're doing these different pilot batches, and is your staff monitoring GAN levels or anything of that particular nature? Are you taking those variables, or do you just just pitch the yeast? So are you gathering at different intervals or anything like that?
We don't. When we're doing like all malt things, we're generally not measuring anything like that. I mean, we usually with an all malt where you're never going to be deficient in nitrogen.
Very true.
So that's not necessarily a variable we'd measure, but generally we'd be measuring, like speed of gravity drop and final apparent attenuation and things like that, and then taste tests and parameters like that.
Awesome.
I think we're going to need to.
Are you gonna expand that to Mead anytime soon, Lance? Let me know.
I mean,
I'll make a trip to Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to talk to our pilot brewing crew because it's something we definitely need to get into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, they're probably gonna like it a little bit more. That whole generating the mead must process is gonna be a lot easier than those long brew days.
That part is very appealing.
Yeah, and you can actually turn your back on a mead fermentation, unlike beer.
Yeah, not quite as much krausen, I would imagine.
No, not generally. Although, from what Carvin was saying, some of these hot yeasts they get pretty excited. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have. Had definitely had to break out the blow off tube. So for some of these, they if you're feeding them at the high level, they're going to generate some CO2.
Interesting. Carvin, have you used Omega's yeast on? I know you've done some traditionals with it. Have you played with other styles with these different yeasts?
Yeah, I've done traditionals. I really like their Irish ale and their British ale yeast for traditionals. I love the hot ones too. I love the Lithuanians. I love the Norwegians. I've used the Lithuanian and the Norwegians for traditionals. I've used them for melomels. I've used them for berry, stone fruit, spice. It's a great all-around yeast, So your imagination is your limitation with these yeasts. So I would recommend doing some small traditionals first, so you can get the flavor profile of the yeast, what it's going to do. I would suggest using a neutral honey. Don't be using your metaphone or or your really distinct honeys with it, because you really want to get a grasp of what these honeys can do. I mean, what these yeasts can do to the honeys. So I used a lot of alfalfa. I used some clover. I used some orange blossom because I know what orange blossom tastes like. So I knew what flavors the yeast was bringing to the parties. But once you establish those baselines, your imagination is your limitation to what you can create with these yeasts, especially at high temperatures.
That is really cool. Now I'm thinking I need to go buy a 5-gallon pail of clover honey from one of my local beekeepers and see what happens.
Clover is a very underrated honey. People treat clover like the redheaded kid in the room, but although redheads are very evil and they're very violent people.
Well, they have no souls either. You know that, right? But, redheads, gingers have no souls.
Right.
But clover honey is definitely a good honey. It's very underrated.
Yeah, Lance, we're gonna have to drag you kicking and screaming into the mead world. I'm afraid. You're doomed.
Yeah. No, any mead I've ever had, I liked. It's not, I don't have a good reason for not having. I'll just have to, like I said, push our pilot people a little harder and start experimenting more on this.
I don't think you'll be lacking for resources either.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
And don't think you'll be lacking for customers. I mean, lately, especially like in the last couple of years, the use of beer yeasts has gone through the roof in mead. I mean, it's always been there, but there's been a lot of movement in that direction, especially with the advent of what we call session meads, which are meads under 8%. And those are really popular because they ferment fast. And from a commercial standpoint, they're easier and less expensive to make because they ferment fast, so they can rotate the tanks quicker. and they've got a lot of broad crowd appeal. It's beach mead
Yeah, and people
basically.
can drink more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can get a six pack of mead and go to the beach. And a lot of them are canning this stuff too. So,
Yeah.
that's a thing too. So, I mean, I think that's part of what spurred the movement into beer yeasts. But also, it's just like, okay, I can only DV10 so much before I need to try something different. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you want to keep broadening your horizons. And speaking of which, we got a question from Christian on our live chat. Is asking, he'd love to know more about your Saisonstein monster strain.
hmm Um, yeah. More than I said. So yeah. Um, I mean, from the
I think you
beer
missed
side
that
of it, I
part.
mean, it is okay. Yeah. So it's a hybrid of the French Saison and the DuPont Saison strain. So I mean, you can think about how you are a child of your parents. You have genetic material from both parents. The Saisonstein's monster has genetic material from both the French Saison and the DuPont Saison. From a flavor perspective, it tastes more like the DuPont strain, but it has the reliable fermentation kinetics of the French Saison. Um, Both of those strains, the parent strains, are diastatic, which I guess in the mead side of things doesn't mean anything, but it means it secretes an enzyme that can break down starches and dextrins. So in beer, where maybe a typical English ale yeast would ferment a 1050 wort down to 1010, this a diastatic yeast could take it down to 1, because it would secrete this enzyme that breaks down all remaining starches and dextrins into fermentable sugars. Like I said, then on the honey side, when you're just dealing with simple sugars, that's not as relevant. But it would ferment very dry. It's alcohol tolerant. Um, it's phenolic. I also don't actually know if that matters in the mead side either. That, I guess, would be a question for all of you guys. So in the beer world, a phenolic yeast will convert ferulic acid from the malt into 4-vinyl glycol, which gives you that what we think of as a Belgian flavor, like a clove or peppery aroma. Um, but it only does that when there's ferulic acid present. I don't know that honey would have ferulic acid. Is that a characteristic you ever get in the mead, depending on yeast usage,
Well,
or no?
we've actually got quite a fairly large movement of what they're calling, for lack of a better phrase, beer style meads. And we also have braggots, which is a style that is, it's a mead, but it's fermented to be beer like. So they're two different things. It's really confusing, but um, but what we're seeing people that we're bringing in hops, we're bringing in candy sugar, we're bringing in lots of ingredients that typically only show up in beers, and then but doing them with a honey base, so the honey being the primary fermentable as opposed to malt or something like that. So we're coming at it from a different direction, but some of the same ingredients are getting added. I don't know which of those ingredients would have that acid in them, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're bringing any malt to the party, then you're going to have ferulic acid, which if you're using a phenolic yeast, then will give you that clove or spice, or that type of aroma. So it would be a relevant. You'd want to know that if you wanted that character or not in those styles of mead. So yeah, so it would be relevant in those cases. Um, and I'm pretty sure most wine yeasts actually tend to be phenolic. So they do make, because that's kind of the natural state of yeast, is to be phenolic. So a lot of the clean English ale yeast, we've got the lager yeast and all that, they're actually a mutated version. They've got a broken version of that gene. Um, yeah, so I guess, yeah, so that would be another relevant piece of information about Saisonstein's monster, is it is phenolic. So if you're doing anything that's going to have malt in it, you're going to have that so-called Belgian flavor.
Hmm.
Okay.
We're getting a couple of questions on the chat about whether the Norwegian yeasts have a kill factor and how well they play with other yeasts.
They, as far as we know, they do not. I mean, that's not something we've done a lot of testing for, but I don't know if others have. But I'm fairly certain that they're killer negative. As far as playing with other yeasts, I mean, again, I think it's going to depend on if you're combining with other Norwegian strains, I think you're fine. If you're combining them with, I mean, just say an English ale strain, then you'd probably want to ferment in temperature ranges comfortable for the lower temperature strain, because at that low temperature strain is going to grow fine at the higher temperatures, but maybe producing off flavors. So I would say go nuts with temperature if you're blending with various Norwegian strains. If you're blending with other strains, skew towards the temperature profile for the other strain.
That is good advice. Be interesting to see what would happen comparing something like K1V, which I've had pretty good experiences with that at warmer temperatures as opposed to hot temperatures, and compare that at various temperatures with the Norwegian yeasts.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't doubt if the Norwegian strains are killer sensitive. So if you're using a killer strain, it might be an issue.
Yeah, I would do these separately and maybe blend them at the end. But even just comparing what the Norwegian yeasts do versus what the K1V that a lot of us are used to does at high temperatures.
Right.
It's always better when you start. It's always better when you start talking about mixed fermentations to ferment those yeasts, separately, and then blend them back together. You have more control. Unless you're getting into something like Del Brecchii, where you're pitching it for the first 72 hours in the muss, and then producing, and then pitching like a sack strain or something like that. But you're going to get more control if you ferment them separately and then blend them back together. Then you're the chef at that point. But advice,
right.
Throwing both the yeast in there and say, hey, let's do a mixed fermentation that way.
True.
Well, I'm sure there's some yeast that do well that way.
Yeah. Matt Whitey is asking, what is the K factor?
I mean, it's a protein produced by some yeast. I think it's actually like yeast virus based that can kill susceptible yeast, the yeast that don't have a way to defend against it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we got them. They throw out questions on it. We've got a live chat over on Slack that our folks come in on. So, did you guys ever think about, like, I don't know, ciders and meads when you were coming up with all of this, or did you pretty much just beer was where it was at for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the focus has been on beer since we started the business. I mean, I think when I was starting to brew and just get into fermentation, it was something I played with on my own, but I mean, we're talking, 20 years ago. So, yeah, business-wise, we've focused on beer. But, yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's definitely something we need to look more closely at. Because, I mean, we do get customers reaching out that are doing ciders and meads. It's just not something we've experimented on.
Well, we'll have to get somebody up there. We need to get you guys you're over by Chicago, right?
Yeah, we're businesses in Chicago.
Okay. You'll have to come up to the AMMA MeadCon East. That's going to be going on September 6th and 7th, or is it 5th and 6th? It's Friday and Saturday of that week. And I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. And we'll have mead makers and meadery owners. It's September 6th and 7th, from probably mostly on the East Coast, but this is a first year for us doing an East Coast based event. But we've got people talking about mead making and yeast, and I expect Carvin, you're coming, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I will be there.
Good, cool. I would miss you if you weren't there. Bring Robin too. I don't get to spend enough time with her. I'm not running this one, so I'm just showing up. But yeah, Lance, it'd be really cool because we could totally make sure you meet a lot of people that could.
Yeah, that would have been good. That actually happens to be the same weekend we're having in Chicago. Burnt City Brewing is having a Kite Fest.
Oh,
so we're
no!
actually so the aforementioned Lars Gerschel is actually coming to Chicago.
Oh, yeah, well, you totally got to be there, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, and we're sponsoring that, and there's going to be like 30 breweries pouring at this festival, all making beers with these Norwegian strains. So that's unfortunate timing.
Yeah, it is unfortunate timing. Well, we'll still make sure to hook you up. We'll listen. We have our big festival, or our big conference is in March in Colorado.
Okay.
This one in Pennsylvania, it's going to be north of Philadelphia, is first year we've tried an East Coast one, and we're kind of ramping it up. But the one over in Colorado we've been doing for 3 years. And it's a pretty big event because it's also in conjunction with the largest mead competition on the planet, the Mazer Cup. So, yeah, like anybody goes and if they can. And it's a lot of fun. And
a bunch of us nobodies go too.
Yeah, we'll try to make it out there next year then.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get on the info list. I'd love to have you guys come and set up an exhibition table at the trade show, or present, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, happens I organize that because I work with the AMMA. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, we can try to actually do some experiments in the meantime, so have something intelligent to talk about.
Well, you're going to be hooked up with Carvin, and Carvin's Experiment King, so he's going to be able to, give you a lot of background information, and he and I together can hook you up with a lot of other people. So yeah, we'll make sure you guys get what you need.
Sounds good.
That is very cool. So I'm just excited about it because there are a lot of people who don't have a serious temperature controlled environment. So being able to, I mean, for me, I need to go and set up that cooler, but I just never get around to it. But I've had more than a few meads go sideways because the temperature did one of those 30-degree swings that they do during the day in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wait a minute, it was just 60 a little while ago. How's it 90 now?
Yeah, no, I mean, these kind of throw that variable out the window. It just, I mean, it's the same thing in the beer world. It just doesn't really matter. You can pitch it at 80, 85, leave it at ambient, and let it go where it goes.
That is just so incredible. And even having heard it, from Carvin's experiments, and what I know from you guys, and what I've read about your yeasts and other sources, there's a part of my brain that goes, "This can't be right."
Yeah, no, that was my thought
this can't be possible.
As well. Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a different paradigm shift, and but it works. Spent a lot of time making a lot of mead to prove that it works. Prior to my presentation at MeadCon, and it definitely works.
Big time. That is really cool. So what are you guys going to do at this festival that you're having on the same weekend as MeadCon East?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly going to be so brewers from all over the country will be pouring. I think we're going to have 30 breweries total, and at some point Lars is going to give a talk, about his travels and about the Kvike Yeast, and so a lot of drinking and listening to Lars.
Sounds like a totally boring weekend. Sorry for
that.
Absolutely. Totally
lame.
Yeah. I just don't know how you'd be able to stand it. If you get really bored, you could come on over to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Well, that is just, I've got all kinds of ideas, and I'm gonna get some of this, some of y'all's yeast, and then I'm gonna hit up Carvin for some ideas.
Yeah.
But I've got a bunch of different ingredients I've been futzing around with and wanting to do some stuff with, so I'm gonna touch base with him and go listen to your audio, Carvin, since I didn't get to hear you talk, and work up some recipes and do the experiments, see if that stuff survives North Carolina in the summertime. You know?
I'm confident it will.
Yeah.
So am I. If it can handle Arizona, I'm sure it can handle North Carolina.
Yeah, but it's a dry heat, Carvin.
Yeah.
I don't think the yeast care too much because they're wet.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what they always say,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was like, Carvin, did you ferment yours inside, or did you just put them out on the porch?
Oh no, I didn't. All my stuff was done inside. So, and when I wanted to raise the temperature, I have conicals to where just like they can cool, they can heat too. So I can heat that must up to around 82, 84, and then pitch the yeast.
Okay. So you did a more scientific approach, which makes sense. You've got the equipment and gear for it. I was seriously thinking about doing a couple 2-gallon batches with this and putting it out on my sun porch, which faces south, so it doesn't get the direct, blasting light, but it stays at about 90 all day long.
Yep. Yeah, it's totally reasonable.
Yeah. And and basically doing it from an environmental standpoint and saying, all right, can it really survive if the air's not on? And the temp spikes like it's done any number of times here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to the point where I actually don't start fermenting until like October or November, depending on how long summer is here, because that varies. And I stop by the time we get to March or April, because after that it's just too stinking hot, and you run the risk of, if you don't have a cooler to put it in, or a heating or cooling blanket or whatever, of your mead going sideways because of a temperature swing. So.
Sorry, I'm laughing because we're forecasting 2 inches of snow tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hit 90 today. It hit 90 today. So yeah, you can curse all you want. So yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Carvin, I have a question for you. When you're fermenting in your conicals and you get it up to your 82 or 85 degrees and then let the yeast in, at the level of fermentation kinetics that's going, do you have to continue to heat it, or does it pretty much sustain its own heat at that point?
It can pretty much sustain its own heat from what I've seen. Even when I pitch at like 72 or 76, there's some thermodynamics going on. Fermentation is going to produce heat, so you're going to get some heat exchange there. One of the things that I mentioned in my presentation, if I'm doing like 3 gallons, I'll still use a 5-gallon fermenter because it kind of works as like a heat exchanger. But now in my latest round, I've just been embracing the heat. I'm not trying to regulate it anymore. I'm just trying to see, Lance, I'm going to find a threshold somewhere. I'm just going to keep pushing it until I find it. So, but yeah, right now it's just, it just works beautifully, whether it's in the 70s, the 80s, and even getting into the low 90s, I still haven't had any problems.
Yeah, and that's consistent with what we've seen. I mean, you should have no fear in taking it up close to 100.
Okay. I'll take you up on that.
I haven't been that full yet, but,
yeah.
But now that I've heard it from the man himself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to explore that horizon.
You went way far away there for a second, Carvin. I'm not sure what happened.
I said, yeah, I'm going to explore the 100 Fahrenheit horizon now that I've heard it from Lance.
Yeah, there
cool.
you go. Lance, what's the lower recommended temp on these? We've been talking about the higher temps, but what happens if, somebody's brewing in their basement?
Yeah, I mean, we had right when we first released Hothead, there were people kind of testing those limits as well, and I mean, people have done like essentially like lager fermentation temperatures and gotten Hothead to ferment out. So 55 degrees. I mean, it's slow at those temperatures, but it will still ferment.
Huh. And it's not throwing off
flavor.
notes, even though it's 50 degrees lower than where it likes to be.
I did not. Well, we haven't done that one ourselves, so I don't know what the outcome was.
Huh.
I mean, we've done more like typical ale temperatures,
Yeah.
68, 70, and I mean it's fine there. Again, it's more conventional, I guess, at those temperatures. Acts more like a normal ale yeast.
Okay. That's just fascinating. I mean, I love it's got such a broad capability.
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, not much you can do wrong as far as temperature goes.
That's what I need.
No kidding.
Idiot-proof yeast.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh shoot! I forgot to. Oh, but it's fine. It's yeast.
Oh crap!
It's
the air conditioner went out.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I should have racked a week ago. Oh no, it's fine. We've got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm notorious for going, oh crap, I was supposed to rack that like yesterday, last week.
For me last year, oops.
Yeah.
AJ's our queen of do what
So
I
I guess
say,
that's
not what I do.
Yeah, I'm the resident bad example. I'll screw it up so you don't have to. On that note, how do these yeasts respond to being left in the bucket for a long time?
Yeah, that's actually, I wouldn't have, I mean, beer, we're generally, especially with these yeast where the goal is kind of turning around quickly. We haven't,
fair.
Done anything like that, like with extended contact time.
We need to set you guys up to do experiments like that because homebrewers do that differently than commercial. Commercial, of course, they're paying attention because that's money. That
some of us get
lots
busy.
and lots of it. Yeah, but some of us got like other jobs.
Life gets in the way.
You're right. Yeah. So it's just like it'd be interesting to start a series. We'll have to reach out to the community and see who's game to do a series of yeast neglect experiments.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeast abuse.
Yeah.
Definitely more things to think about, though.
Yeah.
Well, Lance, I'm gonna have to jump off. I gotta fly to Boston tomorrow and got to do that work stuff. But it was a pleasure meeting you, Vicky and AJ. Is always a pleasure. And
thanks, Carvin.
I look forward to sharing some information with you, Lance, and Mead, of course.
That's what I was going to say. It's a Mead too.
Oh, yeah.
It was nice to meet you as well.
Okay.
Thanks,
have a great
Carvin.
night, everyone.
Night, Carvin.
Night, Carvin.
Night.
Lance, don't be surprised if he shows up at your place. At Omega with his yeast or with his meads to go. Here you go.
If he comes by with some mead, he's welcome.
Yeah. Well, he's likely to. Carvin he goes to lots of places. He owns his company, so he travels a lot for work, and so he's just every week it seems like he's someplace else. So yeah, I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised to see him show up at Omega. Go hi.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, well, you're now that you've been here on Got Mead and we've told you about MeadCon, the AMMA, which you're probably thinking, what the hell is the AMMA? It's American Mead Makers Association. We're the trade organization for the industry, home and commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, and I work with them. I'm the executive director, but we've got a board and stuff of various and sundry people and a bunch of home and pro mead makers that run the show. And
okay.
Yeah, so we'll drag you kicking and screaming right into it.
Hey, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, you guys will start getting overrun by mead makers, and you'll have to start creating your yeast packages faster.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll keep pumping them out.
Now, are you guys are you guys distributed, or do you distribute through any of like the is it all just direct to Omega, or do you distribute through like Northern Brewing and places like that?
Yeah, Northern Brewer carries our products, and we also sell to LD Carlson, who then distributes to a lot of
All over
shops as
everybody,
well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but then also direct from us. I mean, shops can get stuff. Well, shops can get stuff direct from us, so we don't retail.
Yeah.
I mean, we do sell direct to breweries, meaderies, things like that. But on the hobby side, it'd be to shops and LD.
Okay. I'll link up, but well, your website's already linked. I'm assuming you've got that information on the website. But
Yep, you can find our vendors are all listed on the website.
okay, cool. And for those of you who didn't open the show notes on the website, that's omegayeast.com.
That's right.
Well, this is really cool, Lance. I'm excited. I'm gonna find wherever my whoever I end up getting it from, and I'm gonna get me some and do some experiments. I'll keep good notes and let you know what happens.
Yeah, no, we always love getting as much data as we can. Just helps us advise other customers. So if we can't do all the experiments, it helps that other folks are out there doing them.
Okay.
Potentially also helps you figure out what experiments are worth doing yourselves too.
Well, yeah.
Yep,
Say
yep,
I'm not
yep.
going to be able to tell you parts per million and stuff like that. I do not have the equipment
No.
that Carvin has. I am
If you do.
I am a home brewer, and I make mead in a bucket in my kitchen.
Yeah,
So
no, that was good information because that does give us a jumping off point that we can start playing with.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd
he's
be
he's
very helpful.
really talented and knowledgeable. So he's going to be a really good resource for you guys for mead.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
he knows his stuff, no question about it. Oh, Scott Wiltshire on the live chat is asking, do you guys sell internationally?
Yeah, we have there's some Canadian
Woo!
companies, Toronto Homebrew, Short Finger, this some in Montreal. All this is also on the website, so you should also be able to find foreign ones.
Okay.
Malt Miller in UK. I'm hesitant to name ones because I'm probably going to forget, but again, everything should be right there on the website. But yep, there's some international sources.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, I just went ahead and linked your site on the live chat too, as long as we're doing this.
Excellent.
Yeah. There is a meadery in Washington, Opagard Meadery. They're in Tukwila, Washington. And we actually had the owner, John Opagard, on the show a couple weeks ago. And we were actually asking about that because he traveled to Norway. He's of Norwegian descent.
Hmm.
And he traveled to
Hmm.
Norway and they visited all these places. And he came back all, big on the Norwegian yeast and stuff. So we talked about y'all's yeast a bit on that show as well. But he's going to be making a commercial mead with the
Okay.
Queek. I can never get it right.
It's close,
It's
Quake, and you can
Quake.
actually
Quake. There we go.
you
Okay.
can Google how to pronounce Quake, and you can actually hear a
Yeah, I can
legitimate
hear it. Yeah,
Norwegian
because
saying
I'm
it.
just going on what it said in the
Nice.
750 article, and they just kind of wrote it out. I was like, well, that could be Quake or Queek, or it's hard to say.
Yeah, I think it's like a soft V. So if you kind of combine a W and a V, I think that's and then otherwise rhyme with bike. So like Quake.
Quake. Okay, I think I can
Quake.
handle that. All
Yeah.
right, so we know one word in Norwegian.
Yep, that's the only one I
We don't know
know.
what it means or anything other than it's associated with a yeast, but hey,
I think it literally means yeast.
probably does. It wouldn't surprise
Yeah.
me at all. Oh, that's good. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on and telling us about y'all's stuff. Because, like I say, this is an exciting new thing for our industry, and Carvin kind of opened a door that nobody wanted to go through before. So there were a few, but
Great.
the majority of people were like, "Oh, I'm not going there temperature-wise." So I think you guys are about to get overrun by meaderies and mead makers.
Well, great. Yeah, no, this is I mean, been fun for me to learn about a different part of the alcohol production industry that I'm not as familiar with, and definitely going to be driven to do more experiments ourselves.
Well, we're not as big as craft beer for sure, but we're growing at the rate of about 20% a year, so it's not terrible either.
That's healthy growth.
We thought so.
Yeah. Hopefully there are enough bees out there to supply you.
We're working on that. That's a big thing because without those bees, we don't have an industry or a life. So
That's right. Yeah.
But all right, well, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It's fun to learn about new stuff that we can use doing what we do, and I'm glad we were able to help you out too, man.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out and having me on.
Anytime. We'll probably bring you back again once this really takes off and people are asking a gazillion questions. So.
And then maybe
we can for sure we can do a follow-up sometime.
Yeah,
and maybe there'll be some more mead specific answers by then. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think once you've gotten up with Carvin and some of the other folks and started delving into that, let's get you back on here and we can really start talking about, specific focus with your stuff as applied to mead.
Yeah, we'll hopefully have more data at that point and we can give some more particulars.
Cool beans. That sounds great. Well, thank you. I will let you get, because you're, are you Central Time or Eastern? Central?
We're in Central, yeah.
Yeah, still late-ish for you. Later for us, but late-ish for you.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
AJ and I are Eastern, so. But, all right, then I'll let you get back to your life, and thank you again. And I will email you on the backside with info for Carvin and whatnot, and get you guys connected.
Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Lance.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
You too.
So that was cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. We've got a listener shout out here to Scott Wiltshire, who has been with Got Mead Live since episode 1. Said we taught him a lot about making mead, and he's on the live chat tonight. So thanks, Scott. He was all Mr. Cool Guy at the very beginning. It's like, I've been here since day 1. That's so cool. I love to hear that. Coming up on in the mead world, besides hot yeast, is May 4th. We've got Leaky Roof Meadery has May Day at the Meadery. May 9th, the Royce Detroit has the complete introduction to mead with Ken Schramm. It's a talk. And May 17th is Rushford Meadery and Winery's Winery Comedy Tour. This is actually top flight comedians, so like A-listers, I guess you'd call them, A-list comedians that are doing winery tours. So they're just like going and doing their
fun.
Yeah, like, all right, cool, comedy, wine, that works, But yeah, I didn't know about this, but I found it when I was looking around for things going on in the mead world. And so, yeah, if you're anywhere near Rushford Meadery and Winery on May 17th, that might be worth a look. May 18th and 19th, Orchid Cellars Meadery in Maryland has Wine in the Woods. It's a wine festival, and they are going to be there. I've been to Orchard Cellars. Their mead is fantastic. If you like pepper meads, they've got like 4 or 5 different pepper meads, and they're all of them excellent. And this is coming from somebody who's not real huge on pepper meads, if any of you have listened to me for any amount of time. So theirs goes from fish peppers all the way up to ghost peppers, and they're all exceedingly well done. So definitely worth a check. Yeah, I was really impressed, and I mean, I don't like the really hot peppers. So I mean, I did not drink a lot of it. I'll give you that. But I brought a bottle of the fish pepper home with me. That was really, really good and well within my pepper tolerance. So yeah, very nice. May 19th, Starlight Meadery is having a Reiki 1 certification class. So if you're wanting to learn more about Reiki, that's worthwhile. And oh, hey, mead tastings, darn. May 20th to 22nd, Wye Valley Meadery has the London Wine Fair. So these guys are in the UK. May 24th and 25th, Wild Blossom Meadery and Winery has their Singles Mingle event. May 25th and 26th, Lincolnore Winery has Caribbean Wine and Music Festival. Oh, I wonder what the food's going to be like for that.
I'm guessing amazing.
I know, right? I love Caribbean food. June 1st, Honeymoon Meads has music. Giants Causeway will be playing. June 1st, also Warped Pours 2, Pour Harder. That just sounds dirty. Metro South Homebrew League Homebrew Festival. June 8th, Woodstone Creek Artisan Winery and Distillery has Saturday Sips, and I gather this is a regular thing. So you can try wine, mead, spirits, and ports all at the same place.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I know. It sounds dangerous. Better have somebody to drive for you.
Yeah, you'd need a designated driver.
Right. June 27th, Brothers Drake Mead has the Bees Meads at the Conservatory. And then July 27th is the Orcas Islands Cider and Mead Festival. We do this one every year. Well, we put it on here every year. We haven't been to it yet. We're working on that. But it's a big festival, and you want to buy tickets if you're going to go. So that's what's coming up for things going on with Mead. I am still pulling together guests for dates at this time of year. Seems like everybody's out doing something, so I'm going to line up people and try to get all the dates filled. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Night, everybody.
Night, everybody.